So during exercise, there are physiological changes to the body, such as an increase in temperature, an increase in acidity, and an increase in the levels of carbon dioxide or CO2. And these changes result in hemoglobin having reduced affinity to oxygen, allowing it to disassociate oxygen to the working muscles. And when oxygen is travelling from the lungs to the working muscles, it's 100% saturated with oxygen and has a partial pressure of 100 millimeters of mercury, which causes a steep concentration gradient to occur between the working muscle and the capillaries. Once the blood has left the working muscles, it will have lost oxygen, and the blood will only be 25% saturated, as it disassociated 3 of the 4 oxygen molecules it is able to carry per molecule of hemoglobin. So the partial pressure will now be at 20 millimeters of mercury due to the steep concentration gradient. So next we have the energy continuum. So the ATP-PC system, or adenosine triphosphate phosphocreatine system, the lactic acid system and the aerobic system all contribute towards ATP resynthesis, allowing muscles to contract. However, throughout steady-state exercise, different energy systems become dominant at different periods of time, and the contribution from the energy systems is determined by the intensity and duration of the activity. So basically, dependent on the timing and the intensity of the activity, a different energy system will be used. So when the exercise begins, the body works without the presence of oxygen. So this means it's in an anaerobic process. Anaerobic means without oxygen. So this will be done often in the ATP system. So this occurs for a very short period of time at the beginning of exercise, and there's an inadequate amount of oxygen available for the muscles, which is why it occurs. So ATP is able to be used for approximately 3 seconds, although due to the fact that ATP is stored inside the muscle cells, this means that any response that it requires will end up being fast, of a short duration, and of a maximal intensity. So the ATP system tends to get you going in the activity, essentially. Additionally, it's a relatively easy process due to the energy being available to the muscles instantly, because it's stored there. Following this, after the first couple of seconds of exercise, then the phosphocreatine system begins to kick in and start working. So the PC system, which is what I'll call it, predominantly uses glycogen as its main source of fuel. And this is found in the muscle cytoplasm and can be directly available, which means it's a quick and effective system to use. The process works anaerobically, again without oxygen. It produces a total of 1 ATP molecule, which can be used for ATP resynthesis, and it lasts for approximately 3 to 10 seconds with a very high intensity, allowing for maximal exercise to occur. So together, the ATP-PC system is suitable to withstand exercise for 10 to 15 seconds, and they stimulate extraordinarily quickly, allowing immediate energy to be supplied to the working muscles. So a lot of exercise will need to continue beyond that 10 to 15 second mark. So the lactic acid system is the next system to be used. And it's another anaerobic system, which can last from anywhere from when the ATP system shuts off to the 3-minute mark. So the intensity of exercise is between moderate and high. However, there are waste products produced by the lactic acid system, which there aren't for the ATP system. And one of these, hence the name, lactic acid. And lactic acid causes muscle cramping. It's painful to have in the muscles, which is why there is a threshold for how long you can use the lactic acid system for. This is dependent on people's resilience to lactic acid. Some people grow a tolerance, as they can train the lactic acid system and grow an increased tolerance to the lactic acid, which will allow them to use it for longer. So the process takes place in the muscle cytoplasm and produces a net gain of 2 ATP. 2 ATP are used and it produces 4 ATP. And so after the lactic acid system has reached its threshold, the aerobic system will become the leading system, and its main fuel is oxygen. So an example of this is the intermittent sprint test. So intensity will decrease as duration takes over. And this is the reason why the aerobic system develops into the dominant system after the lactic acid system. So the aerobic system uses oxygens to be able to resynthesize ATP molecules and is very effective in doing so. It's also able to use carbohydrates, fats and proteins as a fuel source. So the system lasts for around 3 seconds until there is insufficient supply of oxygen available, which could be many hours potentially. However, exercise is performed at a low intensity, which means that resynthesis is easier. The process is lengthier and much more complicated compared to that of the PC system, even though the waste products are barely damaging to muscle contractions and they are carbon dioxide, heat and water, as in sweat. Mo Farah would use this system during his races as it's the most sustainable system for his long distance running. Moving on, we've got aerobic respiration and the Krebs cycle. So aerobic respiration is a type of respiration that requires a different supply of oxygen to work. So the equation for aerobic respiration is glucose plus oxygen is carbon dioxide and water. And I've put in brackets, plus energy. So firstly, glycogen is transformed into glucose by being broken down by the enzyme glycogen phosphorylase, or GPP. Next, the glucose is broken down further, splitting into two pyruvic acid molecules, and this is broken down by the enzyme phosphofructokinase, or PFK. It's much easier to call it PFK. The process occurs in the muscle's cytoplasm and produces a net gain of 2 ATP. Pyruvic acid then enters the Krebs cycle, however it's too large to enter in the form that it's in. So it needs to be broken down into acetyl-CoA by coenzyme A. During this process of breaking down, 2 carbon dioxide molecules are discharged. As acetyl-CoA breaks into the Krebs cycle in the mitochondria, which is shown in figure 4, it joins with a 4-carbon molecule called oxaloacetic acid, which forms a 6-carbon molecule, and this is called citric acid. That might sound familiar, it's because citric acid is also in like fruits and stuff like that. As the molecule makes its way around the process of the Krebs cycle, citric acid becomes oxidized, and then 2 of the carbon molecules are discharged. To get back to oxaloacetic acid, this loop will occur twice in the process, meaning a total of 4 carbons are released, plus an extra 2 molecules are released during the transition from pyruvic acid into acetyl-CoA, causing 6 CO2 to occur. So this making up the 6 carbons that can be found in the glucose. The role of the Krebs cycle is to release hydrogen ions, as these hydrogen ions are used to resynthesize ATP further on, which allows the ATP system to work again. Final topic are the muscle spindles and the Golgi tendons. So, throughout steady-state exercise, the neuromuscular system reacts with an increase in muscle pliability to allow for safer and more elasticated contractions, and also allowing for an increased transmission rate for the nerve impulses. So, Golgi tendon organs, or GTO, and muscle spindle apparatus, MSA, both convey sensory data to the central nervous system via the medulla oblongata through nerve impulses. And this is to do with the intensity of the exercise, allowing smooth and controlled muscle movements. As intensity increases, so does the muscle temperature, meaning the Golgi tendon organs and muscle spindle apparatus become more resourceful. During the course of steady-state exercise, the receptors become even more subtle, caused by the quantity of the stretching. So the information collected from these will be transferred to the brain faster and more effectively throughout steady-state exercise, subsequently causing faster responses as well as increasing the elasticity of the muscles. Throughout steady-state exercise, muscles lengthen smoother due to the muscle spindle apparatus becoming more comfortable. So essentially, what will occur is the muscle spindles and the Golgi tendons will cause the muscles to become longer. And what this will allow is for the muscles to be stretched further due to the increase in temperature without the risk of contraindication. Okay, that's the final topic. So I'm going to end the presentation here. Thanks for listening.